we've got the folders by user table set up. We have the emails by user folder table set up and the entity set up, and we are displaying that to the user. Now, the third entity that we're going to tackle is the messages entity, right? This is going to contain an individual message that is sent by a user to a user or multiple users, right? Now, the way we build this thing should be fairly comfortable to you, right? The order in which we're going to build this is we're going to start with a model class. We're going to build a repository for it, and then we're going to hook it in to the right controller and have it displayed in the view. It's kind of the flow in which we've been approaching this, and it's no different even here. But doing this for the messages is going to bring in a lot of other considerations in terms of what creates a message and what fetches a message, okay? It's not as simple as just wiring it in when an existing controller loads. This is going to call for creating new controllers as well as creating new routes. So that's going to be the crux of this work here, right? The messages entity is going to support the message view page, right? You can view a message and see what is the, what is the body, what's the subject, who sent it, and to whom. There is also the creation part of it, right? This is not read-only anymore. Unlike the other ones, you can create a message, and creating a message not only shows up as a record over here, but then it also shows up as rows in the emails by user folder, right? It has to go to the right folders for the right recipients. It has to go to the sent items folder properly. So all that is going to be affected as well. And we haven't created this table yet, but there's going to be this table here, which is the unread email stats. So creating a message is going to affect this table as well, right? So there is a lot of implications to this, and that's where the messages and the work required for messages is going to be very different from everything that we've seen so far. What I'm going to do is fast track a little bit the work that we've already done, creating the repository, creating the entity class, and all that stuff is pretty standard, and you kind of get a hang of it now. So I'm not going to belabor that. I'm going to rush through that thing and focus on the more interesting stuff in terms of how messages are sent and how messages are viewed. That's where the real fun is. So I'm going to breeze through the initial part of it at least, all right? So I'm going to start by creating the entity and the repository, okay? So I'm going to go over here, just like you have the email list and folders, I'm going to create a new package called, I'm just going to call it email because email seems to be the name that I've chosen. I know that there is a little bit of confusion. Some places I'm seeing email, some places I'm seeing message. I'm just going to go with email, even though, this is technically not an email application. It's just messages exchanged between other users of that same application. All right. So I'm going to call this email. And then I'm going to call the class email as well. Okay. And then this is going to be a table. And then the value is just by ID. Now, what are the things we need to provide for an email? Well, we have the primary key, which is the time UUID, where we already declared it over here for the email list item, right? This is the time UUID. This is the same UUID that we're going to use for the ID for the email, okay? This is the primary key column. And then I'm going to call this ID, simple. And this is going to be ordinal 1. And I'm going to make the partition, right? So partition key. The other stuff I'm going to get again from the email list item. You have we're going to need the from here as well, the from to and subject. All right. So I have the subject. I'm going to have a from Like who's the ID what created the email message? What's the ID of the person that created this message rather? And I'm also going to have a body. What else do I need? I don't need to save the folder because this is not associated with the folder. This view is mainly for when somebody is loading an email, loading a message, right? They're viewing a message. So it is, yeah, this should be fine. You don't really need any other information, I believe. If you had attachments, this is where you would use attachments, but I'm not going to do attachments for now. I'm going to do getters and setters for these guys, for all of them. And now I have this messages by ID. And now the repository should be fairly straightforward as well. I'm going to call this email repository. And this is going to be an interface which extends Cassandra repository. And then the generic type, the type that we are fetching is email. And then the primary key is UUID here, right? It's not a string here, it's a UUID. Okay. And this should be sufficient. Now I can get a single email by providing the UUID. I'm not doing a find all here, so I don't have to do the overrides that I had to do for the other ones. Okay. Now I have this stuff. I can use this to basically create a route where I pass in the email ID, the ID of a single message, right? Which is this. I'm going to call this ID because time UUID is a bad name for this. All right. So I'm going to call this ID and then get us focus for this. Okay. Now I can give it an ID and then fetch an email, fetch a message. Okay. What I'm going to do here is when I'm initializing stuff, I go to inbox app. And what I'm doing here is I'm creating a bunch of email list items, right? These are just one part of the whole picture. When somebody sends an email, it not only needs to go to the email list item, it also needs to go to the messages by ID because that needs to have a corresponding messages by ID record. There's no normalization here. We have denormalized it. So then it's up to us to make sure that those records are tallying, right? Whenever there is a record over here for showing that up in the list of emails, well, when somebody clicks on it, there better be an email for them to see, right? So we have to insert the corresponding record in the messages by ID table, the email table as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to fix that by adding that repository here as well. Okay, so this is the email repository. Okay, that we're going to import and auto-wire. And over here, when I'm inserting each email to the email list, I'm also going to do the same. I'm going to insert a similar message to the email repository as well. Okay, so I'm going to have email equals new email import. And now email.set ID to be this UUID, right? We want it to be the same thing as this guy. So I'm going to say key.get time UUID email.set from, I'm going to set this as, again, my ID. Okay, email.set subject is going to be item.get subject. Email.set body is going to be body and then plus I. Again, we get body 1, body 2, body 3, and so on. Email.set. What else do we need here? From, we need the 2. Okay, there's going to be item.get get to. Basically, whatever mock data that I put over here, I'm basically using that to create mock data for email as well, so that I have something to view when that email is clicked. And then I'm going to do email repository dot save off this email. Okay, so now I know that when I'm creating mock data, not only is this going to the email list table, it's also going to the email table, and I'm doing this 10 times. Okay. Now, when this happens, I can have this be clickable so that when somebody were to click on a message, it is going to go to the view part for that message. Now, how do I do that? I'm going to have to create a new route, right? I'm going to have to create something like slash emails slash and then the ID. Okay. And that's going to open up that particular email ID because each one of these has an ID associated with it. It's the ThymeUU ID. So I'm going to actually do that. I'll create a new controller in my controller package right over here. So we have inbox controller. This is the only controller that we have so far, right? So I'm going to create a email view controller. Okay. This is a class. Thank you very much. I'm going to make this at controller. I'm going to copy this part over here, which is this guy. I'm going to need pretty much the same things over here. I'm also going to need the folders because guess what? I'm going to show the folders here too, right? When you're seeing a message on the left-hand side, you need to see the folders. So I'm going to get that over here and then paste this here, import all the stuff, core annotation, string utils is from our framework util, Spring Utils, folder is our folder, and we have imported everything else. So I'm going to call this email slash ID. Okay, so our email is the slash ID to make it really stressful. It's the plural that you need to have in the path param. Okay, so we have that, and this is not home page anymore. This is going to be email view. Okay, and I have the authentication principal. I have the model. And here I'm checking if the principal is null or if the get attribute of login doesn't have text. I'm going to return index. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is fetch all the folders, which I need to do. Now I'm going to go here and copy these guys. I don't think I need all of them. I probably need just the folder repository and the email repository. Okay, I don't need this stuff. I'm going to get the email repository, not anything else. All right, so I have the folder repository and the email repository imported. And I need the folder service because I need to get the default folders anyway. So cannot avoid this. Okay, get this line and put this over here. Okay. So we have the folders. Now, after I get the folder, I need to get the email itself, right? So I need to get the ID from this path param and have that be an argument here, right? So let's say it's a string ID, stick an annotation in here, path variable to make this something that Spring is going to parse and inject to me over here, right? So now that I have the ID, I have it as a string. Now I need to make this a UUID. I don't know if it can convert to UUID. Let's actually make this UUID here. And we will see if Spring MVC does a good job with it. Okay. Now that I have this, I'm going to do a email repository dot find by ID of the ID. This is going to give me the optional of email. Okay. Optional email. Now, if this email doesn't exist, that means that somebody is screwed up and they're looking up an ID which just doesn't exist, right? That ID there's no email for that ID. So I'm going to be like optional email dot empty. Well, we screwed up. So I'm going to do return index. I'm going to just take them to, maybe I will take them to the inbox page. Inbox page, right? So you can have fancy error messages over here or whatever. Like you can use flash messages, which is basically you can show a message when the page is loaded just once, and then the page loads again, that message is gone, right? It's a useful thing to do. What is this? It's not empty. Optional email that is present. Okay, so if it's not present, just return to the inbox page. If it is present, then I'm going to do model dot add attribute email, and this is going to be optional email dot get me the actual email, because the optional seems to have a value. So get me that thing. So it is going to get that thing, and then we're going to go and return a new template. We need a new template where we show them the email, right? So what I'm going to do is first let me close all this other stuff, close others, and now I go to the template, resources, templates, inbox page. I'm going to copy and paste. I'm going to call this email page.html. Okay. And I'm going to return over here email page.html. All right. And then my email page, I don't need any of this other stuff. The main is not going to be this anymore. Okay. This main, I'm going to still leave the div there because I quite like the card, but I'm going to remove the other stuff. Okay. So this div is for this, and then closing main. And I'm going to maybe put a paragraph, th:\text equals, I'm just going to show the email subject just to prove that it works. All right. So I'm going to put email dot subject. Okay. Just one paragraph. And I don't need a th if here. And this is going to be main. The other stuff is going to be as is, because guess what I'm doing over here? I am getting the repository, the folder repositories, user folder, default folder, everything is there already. Okay. So this should be good to go, I think. We'll see. It should have restarted now. Then we go back here, refresh. All right. After I log in, I get this guy here. Now I'm going to do /emails/ and now I need the email ID. So what I'm going to do is go back over here and try and fetch this thing. This is zoomed up super high, so I cannot really see what's going on here. I'm going to do a select from, it's called messages by ID. I'm going to get one ID over here. I'm basically going to copy this and put that as a part of the URL over here. So let's see if this works. This here. Cannot obtain where clauses for entity email using this ID. Why can it not obtain where clause? This is the email using the ID. It should be able to find it. That's the partition key. Why is it not able to obtain it? The ID. Is this because this is 1? Or should ordinal be 0? I think I know what's going on. I think that we have to have the add ID annotation when there is just one primary key column in the Cassandra model, right? If you have multiple primary key columns, you cannot have an add ID annotation for multiple ones. But if there is one primary key column, I believe you need the add ID annotation. All right. So let's try this one more time. This should hopefully work, and it should be able to use that as the where clause. Okay. Log in. All right. Let's try this one more time. I'm going to go back here and pull up another message ID. Since this is being generated every time, I'm going to have to look up a new message ID every time I restart my server. Okay, so this seems to be working fine now, right? That was the add ID annotation was what was causing the problem. I'm going to copy body 6, the subject 6 email, and then if I were to paste this, I'm going to get that particular subject. So this is working fine. Now, what I'm going to do is show all of the properties of the email in the email page.html. Okay, so I'm going to make this a card, just like the inbox page.html. There's going to be a card with a card header and a card body. I'm going to put this over here. Get rid of this paragraph here. Actually, make it of this line. There is a card header. I'm going to call this view email. And we're going to have a card body. Inside this, I'm thinking of having a description list. Okay. A description list is, again, semantic HTML. It is a way for you to denote kind of key value pairs, right? So you have a key and a value associated with it, another key, another value associated with it. Well, yes, you can stick them all in a div and they're going to look exactly the same. But with a description list, you get that semantic, that meaning, right? You're saying this is a description list. Just put this as a description list. And then inside this description list, I'm going to have a DT, which contains the term, and then the DD, which contains the definition. Okay, this is how you write semantic HTML. So you say, okay, this is the term, and this is what it means. This is the term, and this is what it's associated with, right? Key value pairs, you tend to use DLDD. Just like, for lists, right? You want bullet points, you use UL and LI. Even if you style it and remove the bullets in your HTML, you would still use UL or LI so that you get that UL or OL, so that you get that bullet point as a representation, right? It's a bulleted list. It's an ordered list or it's an unordered list. This is another, semantic HTML way of doing things. So for example, here we need to show from and then the from ID, to and then the to ID. So it would be something like this. I'm going to say this is from, and then this would be the from ID over here. And then I'm going to have, this going to be to, and then this will have the to ID and so on. Okay. So this makes it very simple. So I'm going to say th:\text equals, and then what I'm going to put here as the definition for the from would be email.from. Okay. Because that's what I have set in my email view controller, right? So I have email, and I'm going to get email.from from there, right? That's email.from. To is going to be email.to. Okay. And then what else do we have? We have subject and we have body. This is going to be subject. And this is going to be the body. Okay. So this is DL, DT, and DD are key value pairs. Let's take a look at how this looks. Not bad, huh? You see, it has the bold and not bold. So the T is automatically bolded by the browser, and the DD is not bolded. So that looks good. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of this though. This is happening because 2 is a list of string, and that's the reason why it's put this square brackets on both sides. What I can do is kind of generate that string so that I'm not doing this. I can create a comma separated string there. Let me actually do that. So I'm going to get this email out into a separate object to local variable email. And I'm going to create a string for the to's. Okay, first I'm going to put this email back so that it gets set on the model. And now I'm going to do email dot dot get to is going to get a list of string. So this is the list of strings that I need to join with comma separation. So what I can do is I can use the string.join method, which takes in a delimiter and the list of elements that you want to join. So I'm going to have a delimiter be comma separated delimiter. And then the elements that I need to join is email.getTo. And now this is going to return me a string, which is I'm going to call this to IDs. Okay. This is going to have all the to addresses separated by this delimiter. And now I'm going to put this on the model as well. I'm going to call this to IDs so that I can access it in my email page. Instead of using email.to, I'm going to refer to IDs, which is what I set on the model by manually adding the separator and getting that to ID string. All right, let's see. I'm going to have to get a new ID. I'm probably going to fix the link because this is a little painful. Since it's being generated every time, I'm going to have to get this every time. Okay. I don't have anything here. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to fix the link and then I'm going to do the other stuff because I don't want to keep looking this up every time. So here's my inbox page, right? When I'm in my inbox page, I can click on a message to go to that particular message. Right now, this doesn't have anything. So I'm going to have to add a th:/href so that is clickable. Here it is. So href is hash. It's not going to work. What I'm going to do is th:/href equals this link structure. So in order to provide a link in Thymeleaf, you need to do the @ brace. And whatever you put inside is going to be the link that gets generated when, as an anchor. And somebody clicks on it, that's the URL that's going to go to. Okay. Now, what is this link? I want this to be /emails/ and then the ID. Okay. So what's the ID? Which is the messages ID. Okay. So I'm going to have plus and then our typical syntax for getting something which is not hard-coded. You have to fetch it from here. What is message here? Message is email list item, right? Or I'm going to have to go to the key. I'm going to have to do a key dot ThymeUUID is what I need to get. All right. So I'm going to have to do message dot key. It's going to give me the instance of that primary key object. And then I'm going to do a dot ThymeUUID, and this will construct the URL for it, right? Let's test it and see if it works. Looks like it's working. Okay, looks like it's working. What I'm going to do just to test the two is I'm going to go to the starting up where I'm hard coding these values, and I'm going to add a couple more. All right, so here's the two, right? I have just one to address. I'm going to add a couple more. ABC, and then DEF. Okay, we will wait for it to reload, and then go over here, click on one of them. Okay, this seems to be doing a good job. Right? I don't have that square bracket anymore when I view an email. All right, cool. While we're in the process of linking stuff, I want to link the folder as well. You see here right now, when I click on this folder, nothing happens. I want to make this a link. I can pass a query parameter when I'm loading the home page. Right now, when I load the home page, it just shows me inbox because that's hard coded, right? I want to use that as a query parameter. So let's actually fix that and wrap this up for now. I'm going to go to the inbox page, which is what is showing. It's not even here. It's in the component. Okay, so it's in the folder list component, right? Here, I want to have each folder that I print over here. So this is the folder. I want this to be an anchor tag, all right? This is going to be A. It's going to be A. And this is going to have a th colon h in it. And then what is the value going to be? The value is going to be the root URL, but with a query parameter, right? So I'm going to have a slash question mark folder equals and the folder. Oh, this is not going to be the dollar. This is the @ because this is a link, remember? Now the link is going to be this portion in single quotes plus what's the name of the folder? The name of the folder is going to be folder.label. So I'm going to get this part and put this over here. Okay, so it's going to be slash question mark folder equals and then dynamically plug in folder.label, right? Let's try this out. Okay, this seems to be working. So here I get query parameter folder equals inbox, query parameter folder equals sent items, which is great, but it's not doing anything. The controller gets the query param, but it doesn't do anything. So I'm going to go over here to my controller, which is the inbox controller, and put that request param in there. We don't have that there right now, right? So I'm going to have a @ request param string folder, right? It's going to get that request param now, and it's going to make it available for my controller. Now, this is an optional request param. So I'm going to stick this required equals false, saying you don't have to send it, but if you send it, I'm going to pick this up. Okay. So here I have a hard-coded folder label equals inbox. What I'm going to do here instead is first check if there is value in this folder string, right? So I'm going to say if not string utils dot has text of folder. I'm going to say folder equals inbox. Okay. If they're not sending a query parameter, I'm going to assume that they're looking for inbox. If they are, then I'm going to use that, right? I'm going to pass that instead of the hard-coded folder label that I have over here. Okay. And now, one other thing I can do is when I'm showing the inbox page over here, you see here, this says inbox all the time. So that has to change as well. So I'm going to put the folder name also as an attribute, right? A model attribute. I'm going to call this folder name, and I'm going to put this folder string. So in my inbox page, I'm not going to hard code this to inbox. I'm going to do a th colon text is going to be the folder name. Okay. So as the query param changes and different folders are loaded, this is the card header is going to show that particular folder name. Let's see. Refresh. All right. So here you go. So now it's working, right? So I click on inbox, I get the query param inbox, and I see inbox contents. I click on sent items, I see sent items. Well, there's no sent items, so this is empty. So this makes perfect sense, right? So now we have a couple of navigation flows, right? For one, I can click on this to get to view the contents of that folder, and I can click on one message and then view that message itself, all right? At this point, I'm going to commit these changes, and we're going to move on to possibly composing message. I think that would be a good next step. I'm going to call this add message, or I'm going to call this email view and fix navigation. All right. So I'm going to have this as a checkpoint. And in the next video, we're going to tackle how to compose a message.